888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Stephen Moore, once with the Wall Street Journal, now with the Heritage Foundation, is also a senior advisor, economic advisor to President Donald Trump. Stephen Moore, as always, thank you very much for coming on.
Hi, Larry. Great to be with you.
Stephen, what happened last time?
Last night or
no, last time.
My flight was delayed, and I said I got to get off this flight so I can do Larry Elder. But anyway, tonight is a good night to do it because I don't know about you, but I am so dispirited, demoralized, dumbfounded by what Republicans did last night with that budget. It is a disgrace. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It is a disgrace for a party that calls themselves for limited government and fiscal responsibility to pass a budget like that.
What is the president's response to that?
Pardon?
What is the president's response to what the Senate did?
Well, look, I mean, you saw what the president said today. He said, look, I wanted more money in the military, and the only way I could get it was to give $150 billion of more social spending for the Democrats. Now, look, I have not talked specifically to the president about this. I agree with most of the things he's done. I don't believe we need a massive increase in military spending, and I don't think we need a massive increase in social spending. Now, what he said is, I could not get the military spending I wanted from the Democrats unless I agreed to give them $150 billion more social spending. By the way, that's not even true. The Democrats said, well, 1-to-1 social spending for military spending. It didn't turn out that. It's closer to $2 of new domestic social programs for every $1 in defense spending. So I don't think it was a good deal, even if you want more military spending. Stephen
Moore, I know that you know Thomas Sowell. He is a very good friend of mine, and I know that you know him.
He's my God. I love that man.
He's a colossus. And as you know, he's not a registered Republican. And I asked him one time why. And he said because the Republicans' favorite exercise is running for the hills. And in this case, in my opinion, once again, they have run for the hills. We've got more leverage than they have. We're not going to have this kind of leverage for a long time, assuming the Democrats take over the House in the midterm elections. If we can't get fiscal responsibility now, when can we?
Well, that's a great question. We have a Republican House, Republican Senate, and a Republican President. And look, as much as I'd like to blame Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi for this, and look, they do share some of the blame. That take 60 votes in the Senate to pass it, so the McConnell needed Democratic votes. But nonetheless, I mean, it tells you a lot. I mean, Republicans actually are more fiscally conservative, in my opinion, when they are in the minority than when they're in the majority. Mm-hmm. When they're in the majority, they start spending like drunken sailors. When they're in the minority, they play defense. The thing that really bothers me is that I was working back 5 or 6, 7 years ago when we did the Budget and Control Act, which established these budget caps. That was working very well. We had the sequester spending cuts if they went over the budget, and that held spending at bay for 4 or 5 years. Not only did they take a Mack truck, Larry, and smash through those budget caps that they imposed upon themselves, but they also did not reestablish. They didn't even establish new spending caps. They got rid of the sequester. What I'm saying to you, Larry, is the guardrails are gone now. It's Johnny bar the door on spending.
Stephen Moore is my guest. He's a top economic advisor to President Trump. Stephen Moore, Ronald Reagan majored in economics. Donald Trump has a degree in economics. Both of them have approached things very differently. As you know, Reagan cut taxes, as did Donald Trump. Reagan's tax cuts were far deeper as a percentage than were Donald Trump's. Reagan slowed the rate of domestic spending. He increased military spending, but he slowed the rate of domestic spending. We've got the pedal to the metal on domestic spending right now.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, I do think the tax cut that passed under Trump, which, as you know, I had a little hand in doing with my buddy Larry Kudlow, I think that's a huge triumph for the conservative movement.
It is.
I mean, the economic impact of that already is hugely positive. I cannot defend, Larry, you got me here. I can't defend the Republicans on this one. I can't defend the administration, and I will, defend Donald Trump when I think he's doing the right thing, and in most cases I think he has, but on this one, no, I can't defend these guys. I think they have been snookered by Pelosi and by Schumer. And by the way, I find myself in agreement with Rand Paul last night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we call ourselves fiscal conservatives, then we do a blowout budget.
I was sitting in Cleveland at the RNC, Stephen Moore, when Ivanka gave her speech and talked about paid family leave. Are you kidding me? And then President Trump, of course, doubled down with that in the State of the Union speech. What self-respecting fiscal conservative Republican wants mandatory government-ordered paid family leave? Who wants that?
Well, I don't want it. Look, I mean, Donald Trump has done a lot for the conservative movement, starting with Gorsuch and the tax cut and the deregulation. He's really rebuilt our economy, pulled us out of that crazy, Paris Climate Accord thing. So he's done a lot of things right. But you know, I'm an honest guy. I will tell Donald Trump the first time I met him, I said, Donald, a lot of times I'm going to disagree with you. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with him on trade. You know, I'm more of a free trade guy. I don't know where you are.
Yeah, well, you and I are both free traders. We talked about that before, and of course he's wrong about that. As was Reagan when Reagan forced these so-called voluntary import quotas that cost the American consumers billions of dollars. One more quick thing, Stephen. Here's what gets me about people like Trump. They will talk about Ronald Reagan. They'll embrace Ronald Reagan. They'll hold him up on their shoulders, and then do things very differently from him. For example, Reagan had no stimulus program. He didn't believe in giving a bunch of money to state and local municipalities for so-called stimulus. Well, how can we have an economic boom under this president with no stimulus, and then you say you're an admirer of Ronald Reagan, but you want a stimulus?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that, but I will say this, that one of the great mythologies of economics, and you know this because you're a great economist yourself, and I learned this stuff from Thomas Sowell and others, the government spending does not stimulate the economy. Right? That is nonsensical. When the government spends $1, as Milton Friedman taught us, it can only get $1 to spend when it takes $1 from us, either through borrowing or printing money or taxing us. So this idea that somehow, we can just have the government spend more money, and that's going to create jobs. I mean, I think you'd agree with me. That's a lunatic philosophy.
Stephen Moore, all of which, of course, you've told President Trump.
Well, I try to tell Donald Trump, look, I don't think he is in favor of this military spending because he thinks it will stimulate the economy. I think he genuinely believes we need it for our national security. But look,
Stephen Moore,
I'm not a national security expert, but we already spend $700 billion a year on our military.
We've got to go. Stephen Moore, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay, Larry. Have a great night.
You got it. The Rob Porter domestic abuse story coming up next. I'm Larry Elder.